Most apologies are actually selfish. People apologize to feel better about themselves, to get forgiveness, to make the guilt go away, or to get back into someone's good graces. They're focused on their own relief, not the other person's healing. A strong apology flips this completely. Welcome to the Kindest Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to episode 49 of the Kindest Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. And today we're going to talk about something that most people get completely wrong: apologizing. Now, before you think there's going to be some weak sauce episode about groveling and begging for forgiveness, you would be deeply, deeply mistaken. This is the Kindest Extremist Podcast, which means we don't do weak anything. We're talking about the kind of apologies that come from strength, not from desperation. The kind that actually repair relationships instead of destroying your dignity. Unfortunately, there are far too many people out here on these streets who either refuse to apologize because they think it makes them look weak, or they apologize in ways that are so pathetic, so self-serving, that they actually make everything worse. Allow me to share a quick personal story about when I learned the difference between a strong apology and a weak one. It was about 5 years ago when I had completely blown it with someone close to me. I'm going to keep the details purposely vague, but the gist of it was that I made a really dumb decision that deeply hurt this person's feelings. My first instinct, strangely, it was to avoid him completely. I was so embarrassed, so convinced that apologizing would just make things worse. So I basically ghosted him. I avoided places where I might run into him, told myself that it would all blow over eventually, and spoiler alert, it didn't blow over. Months later, I ended up running into him. The look he gave me wasn't anger, it was disappointment. In real talk, that hurt way more than if he just cursed me out. He walked up to me as calm as could be and said, "Shola, I'm not mad about the mistake anymore. Mistakes happen, man, but I'm hurt that you didn't respect me enough to have a conversation about it." That told me everything that I needed to know about how you really see our relationship. And then he walked away. That's when I realized that my refusal to apologize wasn't protecting my ego. It was destroying my integrity. My silence wasn't strength, it was cowardice. And my fear of looking weak had actually made me the weakest person in the situation. I realized that I had a choice to make. I could continue hiding behind my pride, or I could summon the requisite courage to apologize from a place of genuine strength and accountability. Thankfully, I chose the apology, but not the weak, groveling kind that makes everyone uncomfortable. The kind that actually repairs relationships and restores trust. The kind that requires real courage. And yes, it was long overdue, but as they say, it was better late than never. Today, I'm going to teach you how to apologize like that. In this episode, we're going to explore 3 steps that will help you make things right without losing yourself in the process. And if I land the plane in this episode, my hope is that you're going to walk away with the unshakable truth that a strong apology isn't about diminishing yourself. It's about elevating the relationship. It's not about becoming smaller, but becoming more trustworthy. And as always, I'll share my numerous mistakes, God knows I have them, in this area and what I've learned along the way in hopes of helping you to avoid falling into the same pothole that I did. So, if you've been avoiding a conversation that you know you need to have, or you've been apologizing in ways that leave everyone feeling worse, this episode is directly for you. So, if you're ready, let's dive into how to apologize with the courage and the strength that actually heals relationships. For the first step in making a strong apology, we need to talk about something that separates the adults from the children in any relationship: relentless responsibility. Most apologies are trash because they try to share the blame instead of owning their part completely. You can spot these weak apologies from a mile away because they usually start with things like, "I'm sorry, but you also did," or "I apologize for my reaction, but if you hadn't." Those aren't apologies, they're justifications dressed up with sorry language. And speaking of sorry, even worse, if you think that a valid apology is explain why you think you're still right while using the word sorry a few times, you've already lost the plot. I know so many people who do this, and it actually hurts way more than if they didn't bother apologizing in the first place. In other words, you can't apologize and defend yourself simultaneously. You can't take responsibility and make excuses at the same time. You can't own your mistake and then justify it in the same breath. Real apologies start with relentless responsibility, which means owning your part completely without deflection, without conditions, and without bringing up what the other person did wrong. Let's get tactical about how to do this effectively. The first kind of strategy of the episode is the relentless responsibility protocol. So let's revisit the situation I mentioned earlier where I stepped in it and made a big mistake with someone close to me. So after failing to apologize like a coward, I decided to do some research on what a real restorative apology looks like. I discovered that there's 3 parts to this, and here's how I used it in my long overdue apology with that person that I mentioned earlier. First, state what you did wrong. Don't explain why you did it. Don't provide context. Don't mention what led up to it. Just state clearly and specifically what you did wrong. For example, I made an important decision without consulting you, and that decision was insensitive and thoughtless. Second, acknowledge the impact. This isn't about your intentions. I've mentioned this before on the podcast. It's about their reality. For example, I can only imagine how betrayed and disrespected you must have felt when you found out. I violated your trust and damaged our friendship. Third, accept full responsibility. No buts, no however, no if only, just complete ownership. For example, this was entirely my responsibility. I had multiple opportunities to include you in this decision, and I chose not to. That's on me, not on circumstances or timing or anything else. So here's what's cool about this. Do you notice what's not a part of this 3-part process? No explanations about why I made the decision, no mentions of the pressure I was under, no references to the other person's part in anything, just complete, radical, relentless ownership of my actions and their impact. Why does this work so well? Because it does 3 crucial things. First, it shows respect. When you own your mistake completely, you're treating the other person like an adult who deserves the truth, not like a child who needs to be managed with excuses. Second, it creates safety. When someone knows you're capable of owning your mistakes without deflection, they can trust you with their vulnerability. They know that you won't blame shift if they share their hurt. And third, it demonstrates growth. Anyone can make excuses. Only mature people can look at their mistakes clearly and take complete responsibility for them. But here's the part that freaks people out. Relentless responsibility feels dangerous because it makes you completely vulnerable. I get it. There's no defense, there's no justification, there's no protection. You're just standing there completely exposed, admitting where you were wrong. While that's true, I'm going to argue that that's a good thing. That vulnerability is exactly what makes it so powerful. It takes enormous strength to stand completely naked in your mistakes without trying to cover them with excuses. That kind of courage demands respect, even from people who are hurt and angry. And thankfully, in the case of my friend who I mentioned earlier, the apology was accepted and we're able to move on. That's the power of relentless responsibility. It doesn't minimize their strength, it demonstrates it in the most profound way possible. For the second step, we need to address the biggest mistake people make in apologies, making it all about themselves instead of the person who they hurt. Most apologies are actually selfish. People apologize to feel better about themselves, to get forgiveness, to make the guilt go away, or to get back into someone's good graces. They're focused on their own relief, not the other person's healing. A strong apology flips this completely. It's not about you feeling better. It's about them feeling heard, valued, and respected. I learned this lesson in the most humbling way possible during a conflict with my older daughter a few years ago. If you have this warped idea that I'm some flawless example of kindness in every area of my life, allow me to shatter that image into a bunch of tiny pieces with this next story. So my daughter was going through a rough patch at school, dealing with some friend drama, and was particularly sensitive and reactive at home. One evening, after she had an attitude about something minor, I lost my patience and said something that I immediately regretted. You know what? If you're going to act like this, maybe those friends at school are treating you exactly how you deserve to be treated. Oh my God. The moment it came out of my mouth, I knew I'd crossed the line. Still no. Instead of apologizing immediately, I actually doubled down. Look, I'm just saying, if you act like this at home, I can only imagine how you act at school. Y'all, the look on my daughter's face broke my heart. She didn't yell. She didn't argue back. She just went to her room and closed the door quietly, which, as you can imagine, felt so much worse than if she screamed at me. So much for my chances of winning Dad of the Year. Anyway, I sat on the couch for what seemed like hours and just feeling like the worst father in the world. Finally, I summoned the courage to knock on her door. Hey, baby girl, I need to apologize to you. She cracked the door open just enough to see me. Then I made every classic apology mistake in the book. Baby girl, I'm so sorry that I said that. I didn't mean it. You know I love you, right? I was just frustrated because you've been having such an attitude lately, and I just snapped. I feel terrible about it. Can you forgive me? She looked at me for a long moment and then she just flatly said, "Sure, Dad, it's fine." And then she closed the door again. As I'm sure you can imagine, no, it was clearly not fine. Looking back on it, I know exactly why that apology failed. I wasn't trying to make her feel better. I was trying to make me feel better. I wanted her to say, "I forgive you," so things could go back to normal. And I wouldn't have to feel the soul destroying guilt of being such a jerk to my kid. The reality was that I wasn't even thinking about what she needed from me in that moment. And that is the problem that I want to address in the second kind of strategy of the episode, the them centered apology. Here are 3 steps to make your apology about them and not about you. First, ask what they need instead of assuming what will make them feel better. Ask, "What do you need from me right now? How can I help repair the damage that I've done?" This shows that you're focused on their healing, not your comfort. Second, listen without defending. When they tell you how your actions affected them, resist the urge to explain or justify. Just listen. Validate their experience. "Oh man, I can see that what I said made you feel like I don't have your back when you're already struggling. That must have been devastating." And third, focus on their experience, not your guilt. Don't make them responsible for managing your feelings. Instead of, "I feel terrible about this," try, "You deserve a dad who listens to what you're going through, not one who would use your pain against you." So, after learning about this technique, a few days later, I delivered an apology that was centered on my kid and not on me. The difference was immediate. She started crying, not from hurt this time, but from relief. Instead of being a self-centered ass worried about my feelings, I focused my energy on her needs and her pain, and thankfully she finally felt seen. That's what a them-centered apology actually does. It creates space for healing instead of demanding it. But here's what's counterintuitive about this approach. When you stop trying to get something from your apology and start giving something through it, you actually repair the relationship faster and more completely. When you make it about them, they feel seen and valued. When they feel seen and valued, they're more likely to extend grace and work toward reconciliation. Not because you demanded it, to be clear, but because you earned it by putting their needs first. I really hope that makes sense, because this is so powerful if you actually get it. The repair isn't about getting back to normal. It's about creating something that's so much better than normal. It's about building a relationship where both people feel safe to be honest, to make mistakes, and to work through problems together. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. For the third and most crucial step, we need to talk about why most apologies fail, because they're just words without any commitment to different actions. Allow me to kindly punch you in the teeth with some sobering truth. An apology without changed behavior is just emotional manipulation. Yeah, I said it. It's asking someone to trust you again without giving them any reason to believe that you're going to do things differently the next time. People don't want your sorry. They want you to behave differently. They want to see that you've learned something, that you've actually grown, that this mistake has changed you in some meaningful, positive way. Again, allow me to share another mistake of mine. I learned this lesson in a powerful way with my lovely wife of 18 years. Early in our marriage, I had a habit of making commitments that I couldn't keep. I'd say yes to too many things, overbook myself, and then have to cancel on her at the last minute when work obligations conflicted. Every time it happened, I'd apologize profusely. I'd explain how overwhelmed I was, how I didn't mean for it to happen, how sorry I was for disappointing her, blah, blah, blah. And every single time she'd forgive me and I'd promise to do better. But then it would happen again and again and again. And finally, she just got tired of my repeated apologies and said something that changed everything. "Babe, I don't need another apology. I need you to actually solve the problem. Your apologies are starting to feel like lies because you keep doing the same thing over and over again." Damn. Yeah, man, she was right, and that hurt. My apology had become a way to avoid actually changing my behavior. I was using sorry as a get out of jail free card instead of as a commitment to do better. That's when I realized that words without action aren't apologies. They're just noise. And if we want to avoid that outcome, we need to implement the third kind of strategy of the episode, the behavioral change protocol. Here are 3 ways to prove the sincerity of your apology with real, tangible action. First, identify the system that failed. Don't just apologize for your mistake. Identify what in your behavior, habits, or systems led to the mistake. So here's an example of what this could look like. The problem isn't that I just canceled on you. The problem is that I don't have a system for managing my commitments that protects our relationship. Second, propose specific changes. Don't just promise to do better. Outline exactly what you're going to do differently. So for example, I'm going to start using a shared calendar so you can see all of my commitments. I'm going to block out our date nights first before saying yes to anything else. And I'm going to have a weekly check-in with you about my schedule so you know what's coming. And third, create accountability. Give them permission to hold you accountable and establish clear consequences if you slip back into old patterns. For example, if I cancel on you again without a genuine emergency, I want you to call me out immediately. And I'll take full responsibility for planning and paying for the next 2 makeup dates. The key to all of this is to remember that the proof isn't in your promises, it's in your sustained change behavior over time. That's what the final kindness strategy is really about. It's not about fixing the immediate problem. It's about demonstrating that you're the kind of person who can grow, learn, and become better through your mistakes. When you prove your apology with sustained behavioral change, you don't just repair the damage from the mistake, you're actually making the relationship stronger than it was before the conflict happened. All right, my friend, let's wrap this bad boy up. We've covered 3 steps that transform apologies from weak, groveling acts into powerful demonstrations of courage and repair. First, own it completely through relentless responsibility. Take full ownership of your actions and their impact without deflection, justification, or blame shifting. State what you did wrong, acknowledge the impact on the other person, and accept complete responsibility for your choices. Remember, you can't apologize and defend yourself simultaneously. Relentless responsibility feels vulnerable because it is vulnerable, and that vulnerability is exactly what makes it so powerful. Second, make the apology about them by focusing on their healing, not your guilt relief. Ask what they need, listen without defending, and focus on their experience rather than your emotions. A them-centered apology creates space for healing instead of demanding forgiveness. When you stop trying to get something from your apology and start giving something through it, you build trust instead of managing guilt. And third, prove it with action by identifying the systems that failed, proposing specific changes, and creating accountability and following through consistently over time. An apology without change behavior is just emotional manipulation, as mentioned earlier. People don't want your sorry, they want you to act differently. When you prove your apology with sustained behavioral change, you don't just repair damage, you make relationships stronger than they were before. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Shola, what if I apologize like this and they still don't forgive me? What if I do all this work and they're still angry? So about that, this is the part of the episode that sucks to hear, so I kind of saved it toward the end intentionally. Unfortunately, you can't control whether someone accepts your apology. You can only control whether your apology is worth accepting. When you apologize with relentless responsibility, genuine care for their experience, and concrete commitment to change, you've done your part. If they're not ready to forgive, that's their right in their process. Remember, your job isn't to get forgiveness, it's to offer genuine repair. Still though, there's some really good news here. When you apologize from strength instead of weakness, when you focus on their healing instead of your comfort, when you prove your words with actions, most people will eventually meet you in that space of repair. To be clear, not because you demanded it, not because you manipulated them into it, because you created something worth forgiving. So here's your homework for this week, and I want you to take this seriously. If there's someone that you need to apologize to, someone you've been avoiding, someone you've given a weak apology to, someone who deserves better from you, this is your moment. Use the 3 steps that we covered today. First of all, 1, own it completely with relentless responsibility. 2, make it about them and their healing. And 3, prove it with specific, sustained behavioral changes. But here's the key. Don't apologize to feel better. Apologize to do better. Don't apologize to get forgiveness. Apologize to offer repair. Don't apologize to get back to normal. Apologize to create something better than normal. The people in your life don't need perfect. They need real. They don't need somebody who never makes mistakes. They need someone who owns their mistakes and learns from them. That kind of courage, that kind of integrity, that kind of strength, that's what real kindness looks like. Not the weak, people-pleasing nonsense that avoids difficult conversations, but the strong, authentic kind that faces mistakes head on and does the hard work of real, meaningful repair. If there's someone who you need to apologize to, please consider this episode your sign to not wait a moment longer. Doing so may be the kindest thing you've ever done. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know the kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindest Extremist Podcast. Until next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindest Extremist Podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I have one favor to ask you. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. Hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindest Extremist Podcast. Bye for now.